What's up, guys? It's Twice here, and I have yet another deck profile for you. This one is actually a rather different deck, kind of. It's one that's actually a little underrated, in my opinion. I think that people kind of underestimate its power a little bit, and, I decided to build it because it was cheap, and I thought it was really fun, so I was like, alright, why not? And this is going to be a Demon Conquering Dragon Dungaree Unlimited deck. And our starter is, of course, Exorcist Mage Dan, the basic starter that we got in set 12. So I was actually having a discussion with Odd about this deck the other day. He was over and we were just playing a couple games, so I decided, you know what, I want to use my Dungaree deck. And we determined that really the success of this deck is really predicated on this single card, this Forerunner, because whenever a Dungaree, a card with Dungaree in its name, is placed either on the Vanguard Circle or the Rearguard Circle, you bind a card from the top of your deck. And if you don't know Dungaree, he gets power from the cards that are bound in the bind zone, whether it's to kill front or rear guards or to get power with his cross ride. This card is absolutely essential, and if you lose this card, it's very hard to get the same number of cards bound that you would otherwise, which is why I do in fact run two Dans, because if one of them is retired, then that sucks. At least I have a second one, and he is a 10k guard still, and if I have two of them out on the field, and I place a Dungaree, whether it's on Vanguard or Rearguard, I immediately get 2 extra bound cards, which equates to 4,000 power with the Cross Rides Limit Break. So we're just going to move on to the triggers now. So because this is a rather older style deck, you need to be a little bit more offensive. So I run 4 Malevolent Djinn, and then I run 4 Yellow Gem Carbuncle, and then I run, wait for it, of course, 4 Spark Edge Draco Kid. That's right, 12 crit. And then, of course, your 4 heals. So why run 12 crit? Well, this deck needs crits. You're not focused on hand control. You're focused on killing your opponent with massive power. Like, that's what Dungaree Unlimited does. He kills front row rear guards, and he goes at your opponent with massive power. Crits early game are awesome. Pressure early game is awesome. The less, in the meta a deck is, I feel, the more crits it needs. More and more crits. 12 crit 4 heal is awesome in this deck. Because especially if your opponent is at 3 or 4 damage and you're attacking them with a grade 3 where you get Twin Drive, they're going to know that there is a big chance that you could double crit them, and that's not very fun. So 12 crit is kind of essential, and running the old school crits is just purely for style, really, but still 12 crits is really good in this deck because it gives it that little extra offense that it needs. Alright, so then we're going to move on to the grade 1s. So for grade 1s, I run 4 Red Rivers, 8k Vanillas. This is a cross-ride deck, so, boosting the Vanguard, at least a cross-ridden Dungaree Unlimited, will swing for 21, and he can boost rear guards for a hefty amount too, which is always nice. And then I run 4 Desert Gunner Ryan. This card is awesome in this deck, because basically what Ryan does is when you place him either on the Vanguard Circle or the Rearguard Circle, you choose one of your opponent's front row units, and that unit cannot intercept until the end of the turn. So basically, if your opponent has 2 grade 2s in the front row, what you can do with unlimited skill, or even with regular Dungaree, is kill one of the front rows, and then place a Ryan so that the other one cannot intercept. Basically, your opponent has no intercept units. They just lost 10k in guard, which can be a big difference when dealing with big numbers. So that's why this card is so good. He's also a 7k booster, so he helps 12k swingers swing for 19, which is also a magic number for killing rear guards. Then I run 2 Rising Phoenix. It's the card you place at Soul Blast 2 and then you draw. This is a cross-ride deck, but I only use this card once in a game. But I do run Malevolent Djinn, so if I put maybe 2 Djinns in there, give +6 in a turn, or 2 in 2 separate turns, then I can use those as Soul Blasting fodder. But this card just, helps you get another card in your hand. It's just draw power, that's pretty much it. And then, of course, as I always say, in the world of cross rides, break rides, and cross break rides, you, my friend, cannot go without 4 perfect guards. Absolutely need 4 perfect guards. I chose to go with the regular ones because they're obviously much less expensive than Eradicator Gold. This is an Eradicator deck, so I don't run Eradicator units. I originally ran Pollux, the trigger, just because I like his artwork, but he's not really that necessary. Anyway, for grade 2 we run 4 Whirlwind Axe-Wielding Exorcist Knight. A very creative name indeed. He's just a 12k swinger for Dungaree. Unfortunately, it's not like regular archetypes where if you have like a grade 2, then this guy will be swinging for 12. He will only swing for 12 if you have a grade 3 Vanguard, so he's not really that good early game. But, you know, at least when you have a grade 2 Vanguard. But still, like, I have 8Ks and 7K boosters in this deck, so this guy is nice to have on the rear guard because I can swing for 20 against something, 19, just kill any front row that I want if I haven't already with Dungaree, because that's what he specializes in. So, you know, he's just a nice card to hit for some pretty big numbers. And then on top of that, I'm going to run 4 Demonic Dragon Berserker Garuda. He's our damage on flipper for Narukami. We don't need Zuitan because this deck, frankly, just doesn't need a soul charge at all, and plus he only works with Eradicator Vanguards. I do need the damage on flipper in this deck because Unlimited costs 2 counterblasts, and his base form, Dungaree, costs 1. So being able to get off the limit break at least like 3, maybe even 4 times per game is really nice because each time you use the limit break with Dungaree Unlimited, you're binding a card. So each time you use it, you get more power. Anyway, so in combination with them, I just run 2 Thunderstorm Dragoon. Obviously, I'm running 14 grade 1s and 10 grade 2s because I do have that extra Dan. Frankly, this has never been a problem. I never really have a problem getting grade 2s in this deck. And the 10k vanillas are just for a nice ride, you know, nice grade 2 ride. If for whatever reason my opponent doesn't have a booster for their 9k Vanguard, then I can guard for like 1 to pass without throwing anything down. You know, it's just standard 10k rides are always helpful. And he's good on the rear guard too. So anyway, that's my grade 2. It's pretty standard, very straightforward. Just, it gives Dungaree the support that he needs. Now getting on to the grade 3s themselves. So of course, in any cross ride deck, we're going to run 4 of the base form. In this case, Sealed Demon Dragon Dungaree. When I first saw this card in set 8, I thought that he was like the stupidest card that they had ever come up with. I mean, his ability just really made no sense. First of all, when you ride him, you only get to bind 2 cards. So you're only going to get to use the ability like twice. You know, unless of course you ride a second Dungaree, in which you would be able to bind 2 more cards. But as soon as you have no cards bound, he's a 9k Vanguard. And he can't use any limit breaks because you don't have any bound cards, which is why it seemed like the biggest waste of a triple rare ever. And that is until set 12 came out, which is why I say that this, Dan, made this card so much better. Because he let you bind an extra card, let you use that ability 1 more time, and then they gave him the best gift of all, an amazing cross ride. So the basis form limit break is simply Counterblast 1, return 1 bound card from your bind zone to the bottom of your deck and you kill a front row. And you can only use that once per turn. What Unlimited's limit break is, however, is you Counterblast 2 cards, and then you bind the top card of your deck, so immediately you get 1 more bound card. Then you kill an opponent's front row, and then for each card in your bind zone, he gets an extra 2,000 power. So I've gotten up to maybe 10 cards in the bind zone at one point, so he gets an extra 20,000 freaking power. And it's actually not that hard, considering, let's say you have, let's say you just have a regular Dungaree, right? You have a regular Dungaree, you ride it, and you have a Dan. Okay, that's immediately 3 cards that are bound. You can ride a second Dungaree and bind 3 more cards because of his skill also. So that's 6 cards in the bind zone. Then when you cross ride, you're going to bind another, so that's 7. Use the limit break and that's 8. See how it's very easy to actually get cards into the bind zone. And again, what people seem to underestimate about this deck is its ability to actually consistently kill the opponent's front row, which can be very annoying, especially for decks like whenever I have this deck play my Nova Grapplers. It's a huge pain because Nova Grapplers need front row rear guard support. And so clearly, if you're getting rid of your opponent's intercept units, if you're putting pressure on them to guard more, you're forcing them to keep replacing their rear guards, eventually they run out of resources. Now that's kind of what Dungaree is really good at. And that's the other thing that I think that people underestimate about him is that he is really powerful. Dungaree Unlimited has a great ability to get cards into the bind zone and then get massive power from it. I mean, 2,000 power for each card in your bind zone. 5 cards in the bind zone means that he gets an extra 10,000 power. If he's cross-ridden, he'll swing for 23 by himself. And if he's boosted by an 8k, which again I have 4 in this deck, that's 31,000 for the cost of 2 counterblasts. Plus you kill a front row. So it's a super nice card to run. It pressures your opponent, it has a lot of power, and it's a cross ride, so it has that 13k base. I know a lot of people have criticized this deck for being, kind of like a Season 2-ish kind of deck, like it's not up to date, it doesn't work well with break rides or whatever. I would actually say otherwise. I say that Dungaree's support, his use of very basic support, I mean, the most complex card that I probably have in this deck is either Dandan or Ryan. That's it. Like, everything else is straightforward. Either it's an attacker, a damage on flipper, it's some kind of utility. It's a very easy deck to build, it's very cheap, and to a lot of people's surprise, it's actually very threatening once you learn how to play it right. So I love this deck. I think it's really fun. I think people definitely underestimate it, and I can't wait to keep using it. So, hope you guys liked it. Have a great day, keep card fighting, I'll see you next time.